Hello, Alabama fans. Welcome to the Bama Online Recruiting Show. I'm Tim Watts, BamaOnline.com publisher, and with me is Andrew Bone, recruiting editor. We focus on recruiting. We do a little bit of basketball, football, a little bit of everything. Um, we're here to discuss the final official visit weekend. It seemed like this has lasted longer than 3 weeks, right? Constant news, constant notes, constant visits, shuffles. I mean, we've seen guys in the boat and out of the boat several times this week alone. So, Andrew Bone, give me some thoughts as we hit this final week, because this is kind of the week we circled out of the gate with such big names every week, but these are big names in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, a lot of people were expecting that there was going to be a lot of commitments this month on the Alabama end, sort of similar to what we saw last year. And if people go back and look at our first show before that first official visit weekend, we weren't really expecting that. We had it in our heads that a lot of these guys were going to wait it out, take these official visits. A ton of them had set commitment dates already, so we were really expecting them to kind of just go on each visit, take a little bit of a breath, and then make their commitment. So we really haven't seen a ton of Alabama targets fall off the board. Now they only have 6 commitments right now, but that's okay as long as the majority of your key targets are still out there. You're going to be I think you're going to be okay. So as far as this weekend, this is the weekend that we've talked about. I think since February, a lot of these guys set their decision, their commitment, or keep saying commitment, official visit dates in February and March. And we saw that a lot of the in-state guys were coming in this weekend. Sadarian Morgan, Xavier Croll, Zion Gibson. We knew that it was going to
Tank
be
Tank Jones.
Tank Jones.
Yeah.
We knew it was going to be a really big weekend in that regard. Who else was going to make it? We had to wait and see. But they're going to have 15 official visits this weekend. That's the most that they've had this summer, and we're going to see a lot of commitments happen over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Look, the thing about commitments, everyone has to understand is one, they can come out of the blue. We had one literally happen to us right after we did our Tuesday show. Seconds, minutes, not to exaggerate, minutes later, Alabama got a commitment. But a lot of these guys have set this date for after this last weekend because the dead period begins Sunday night at midnight, or is that Monday at 12:01 a.m., whatever it is. But at the end of Sunday, once it's officially Monday, it's the dead period, no more face-to-face visits. So a lot of them have set that date for not soon after this last visit. So really there's no need to like rush and do it unless they just feel like it. But if you look, you got Xavier Croll, Max Sutter, Xavier Griffin, Deacon Smith, Brian Williams, Sed Morgan, all going by June 2nd. So, I mean, we're talking in 1 week, we're going to have the fireworks. We saw targets this week. We saw Jet Tamala flip from Iowa State to Alabama. We saw Sincere Johnson, who Alabama recruited the whole process, just to commit to Ohio State just a few minutes ago. So let's touch on Jet Tamala real quickly, Andrew. I mean, came in for an unofficial, got an offer, came in for an unofficial visit. We knew he was going back to Iowa State. If he came back to Alabama, planned to come back to Alabama, which he does this weekend, he let it be known. It wasn't some inside super secret source that he was going to flip. And then Tuesday, was it Tuesday or Wednesday when he got to the Elite 11, which he's done really well at, and I think it ends today. He it came busting out that he was flipping to Alabama, but he's a big one.
Yeah, Alabama, got a great player in Jet. I mean, he had a great junior season. We went over that in our video the other day. But getting him on board a year after Keelan Russell, really big win for Alabama there, and goes out to the Elite 11. Has competed really well. I mean, this is a guy that comes from a small school in Nebraska and going out there and competing against the best quarterbacks in the country, and had a great performance on Tuesday night in the pro day event. Charles Power at On3 ranked him as a number 4 performer of the evening. So he had a great night. I think he was 18 of 20 in passing attempts last night. So I think that's going to make Alabama fans really excited. And this is a guy that's, hasn't even scratched the surface yet. So I think once he really kind of focuses on just football, he played basketball a lot, but as well. But I think that this is a guy that you should be excited about. And he's not the only quarterback that they're bringing in this weekend. They're going to bring in another guy from originally from Hawaii, but attends high school in Utah.
Yeah, the thing about Tamala, 6'5". The one thing I think fans will get caught up on is the level of competition. And he's on a loaded team in Omaha. It's not a high level of football like you might be used to in Alabama and the bigger classifications, or in the South. Any bigger classification anywhere in the South is usually pretty good. Loaded team, 10, 12, 13 Division I prospects. But the thing, we said this last year about Lotzir Brooks, the one thing we know for certain is talent travels. It's not like you couldn't put Jet Tamal at Hoover and all of a sudden he doesn't know how to throw a football. 6'5", he's big armed, he's athletic. It's a big comparison. But I'm saying at the same stage, he reminded me of Drake May. Basketball footage didn't hurt, but I mean, this is a guy, big size, athletic, and he's moving around a good bit. Andrew, tell us about a Hawaiian native coming in, unofficial or official for KWA?
Yeah, this is going to be an official
Hawaii.
visit for Kawa. I don't know. Sure. Yeah, this is a guy that
Do the
received an
best we can.
offer a little over a week ago, last Wednesday, from Alabama, and we kind of thought at the time. I wouldn't say expected, but thought at the time. Maybe this is going to put a little pressure on Jet Tamalin into making a decision, or some of these other quarterbacks that were still on the board, including Matt Ponatowski. But they're still going to bring him in this weekend for a visit. And I think that Alabama is open to taking two quarterbacks. Obviously, you got to get the you got to get the budget right in there. I think if he's willing to come at a potentially a lower price, probably a significant lower price than Jet Tamala, I think that they can make it work. But they do. I think they would like to get some more depth at the quarterback position. It's going to be hard, and we've said this before. Having three quarterbacks on your roster might be the max, because it's going to be tough to really pay four good quarterbacks on your roster if you want to keep those guys on your roster. So you might have to go a little bit lower and then renegotiate down the road if those players end up starting for your program.
I'm a big believer that patience is required for a quarterback. There's guys that step in as true freshmen and play and do fairly well. Trevor Lawrence recently comes to mind, but I think time and patience and experience, because you can rep it out, but you can't really get that experience. Alabama fans saw that firsthand with Mac Jones, hoping to see it with Ty Simpson. Sometimes you're not ready. I mean, everybody wants to be ready. They want to be that story, that Netflix story starting at 18. Ryan certainly set it off being, so much drama around him being 17, so much attention. But some of these guys might know they need a red shirt. And I think that's kind of who we're looking at here with Tate and Kawa, and we're looking at Jet Tamala. There's a learning curve, and I think they're okay with that. Andrew Bone, let's talk about the big three. And we're not saying they're the only three, but they're the big three this weekend, because there's 3 5-stars. We've known about them for a while. Tank Jones, and certainly said more. We've talked about Xavier Croll jumped into this class to make it even a little sexier. But you got 3 5-stars coming in from the state of Alabama. Let's talk about Tank Jones a little bit. Kind of probably the most open of all of them right now.
Yeah, it seems like he's really enjoyed the recruiting process this month. He didn't take a ton of visits during the year, just because he was focusing on basketball and track, and then during the spring try to get to some schools that he had not seen either before or not seen since last football season. So this is actually going to be his first trip, surprisingly, his first trip back to Tuscaloosa since junior day in February. Alabama went down to see him a couple times. That relationship's still very strong. They talked to him and his dad just about every day throughout the last several months. And these are guys. This is a family that are all Alabama fans, but this is also a family that they know that Tank is the number 1 player in Alabama and a 5-star recruit. And you've got Oregon and Texas A&M, Auburn. Who else am I forgetting?
He got everybody.
Fort
Oregon,
Miami.
he's got, yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of schools that are really pushing hard.
Texas
To
A&M,
get
Oregon,
more,
yeah, all the dash. He could
all
call and
American
commit.
players.
Yeah, he could call and commit where he wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he's going to come into Tuscaloosa this weekend. He's a 6'4.5", 250-pound, edge rusher. You kind of look at him more as a bandit, potentially like LT Overton. Had 16 sacks during his junior season, and this would be a big win for Alabama. A number one in-state kid at a position that they would like to get an elite player at. So we'll see how his weekend goes in Tuscaloosa. See how the negotiations go and stuff like that.
I've heard a lot of people say recruiting's not the same, but I tell you what, you know how I know it's the same? Because when Ced Morgan shows up in Colorado for a 1-day visit like he did yesterday, it was the talk of the whole board, and we get it, but I mean, these kids, I know the old school guys say you shop, we shop, and there's still some truth to that to some degree, but Cedarian Morgan's not committed, first of all. And these kids should, in the day of the portal, I'm a firm believer, I know you are, take your visits, know you're comfortable where you're going. And also there's a step ahead like Caleb Downs. When there was a coaching change, he was very familiar with the next place he ended up at. But went to Colorado for a day. He's expected in 6'5", monster wide receiver. To me, he's a little bit of that hybrid tight end wide receiver that became so popular back when my Saints kind of ran Jimmy Graham out there. So he's got that potential. But he's coming in this weekend, and it's a big one.
Yeah, another in-state guy, 5-star wide receiver, a guy that received an offer from Alabama last spring. I think it was the very first Kalen DeBoer football camp. He came out, worked out, and received an offer. So they've recruited him for a long time. Family full of Alabama fans. I think just about every single trip he's brought more than 5 family members with him to Tuscaloosa. So I would imagine there's going to be a big group in Tuscaloosa again this weekend. So once again, there are schools that are really pushing hard to get him on board. Florida's another one. Auburn, Colorado, as you mentioned. So, this is going to be a big visit for Alabama, and to try to persuade him to stay in state. Try to make sure that he's happy with everything in Tuscaloosa. But yeah, I mean, if Alabama can get him on board after they signed a couple really good players last year in Derek Meadows and Lotsier Brooks, they'll feel really good. They already feel really good about their receiver room moving forward, regardless of how things shake out in this class. But Ced is definitely a big target for them, and a guy that they've heavily recruited for a long time.
Yeah, the thing that does help Alabama, Jamarcus Shepard, Alabama's wide receiver coach, does a great job, has a very special relationship with that family. And we noted going in, we said it last year, nobody believed us. We're saying it again this year. They're expecting a small wide receiver group, 1 or 2. And last year, you got 2 in the boat and everybody wanted 4. That was never going to happen. This year, we think you're looking at 2 unless you sneak one in. But they're only got 1 guy running out of eligibility next year, Jeremy Bernard. And yes, we
I
know.
think a lot of people get worried that you signed 2 last year. Well, you've got to get 4
Yeah,
this
that's
year.
not.
You can't pay every single wide receiver on
Also, they just don't have room. Their room is jam-packed as it is. You lose Jeremy Bernard, and we get the portal could come into play. We get it. But right now, they've got 1 running out of eligibility. They got these guys coming. I'll tell you the most interesting. Can you imagine a package, and this is a completely hypothetical. Can you imagine wide receivers lined up with like Derek Meadows, Marshall Pritchett, um, uh, Cedarian Morgan? I mean, these guys, Caleb Edwards. I mean, literally, this team is on the verge of being taller than Nate Oates' basketball team. Let's talk. Yeah, let's talk about Xavier Croll. Very interesting. Been setting the records. Absolutely fantastic player. I think he might have been to Tuscaloosa. Not that this makes him a lot, but I feel like he might have been to Tuscaloosa as much as Kalen DeBoer at some time.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, there's a guy that reclassified from the 26 or from the 27 class to 2026. Led his team to a Class 4A state championship this past year. A guy that Alabama has recruited heavily, since last season or since last spring. He's visited probably, I would say 12, 13 times, over the course of the last year. This guy that also, when he visits, he doesn't just come in and stay for 8 or 9 hours. It's usually a couple days. And we saw that during the spring. Spent 2 days on Alabama's campus in March. Came back for 8A. Didn't come back for just 8A. He was there on Friday night. Left on Sunday morning. I mean, this is a guy that has high feelings about Alabama. I think everyone kind of assumes going into the weekend that it's a done deal. That he's favored Alabama from the get go. They're getting the last visit. He's announcing next Thursday. It's done. But I don't want to say it's done quite yet. I think Alabama is in a good position with him. I would predict Alabama, but let's just kind of see how the official visit goes, because he's had some great official visits elsewhere. Auburn, Florida State, Texas. Was there another school in there that he visited? I can't remember. But
yeah,
those schools have certainly given their best pitches to him heading into this weekend. Alabama gets a chance to sit down, but they want him. They're going to make their best pitch. I think they're going to end up getting him. But this is going to be a big weekend for Xavier Croll in Tuscaloosa with his family.
Do us a favor, Bama fans. We appreciate it. We've been noticing the attention, the thumbs up, the likes, everything. We appreciate that. His with that thumbs up.
Georgia was the other school on the.
You stopped my preview to throw the dogs in here.
I'll give you this.
All right, give me that thumb. Y'all give us that thumbs up, that like. We appreciate it. Closing in on 12,000 subscribers. We're going to push this to 20,000. We appreciate y'all being here. If you like the content, let us know in the comments. We see them all. We appreciate it. It's a fun time. It's not going to stop after this. We'll have the post game, I guess the post official visitor discussion. We could have some breaking news commitments, stuff like that. But give us a thumbs up and like. And also, you can catch us at BamaOnLine.com. If you're not there, the BOL Roundtable, we are nonstop talking, especially me and Andrew this time of year. Charlie Parter, the team writer, is in Japan for at least 3 more days. And Blake Byler, our young protege, is locking things down, dipping his toes into everything. Andrew, we've talked about the 5 stars. And I'll be honest, if they didn't bring in the 5 stars, this is an impressive group without the 5 stars. I mean, you've got commitments. You've got guys we're looking at. You've got a quarterback. How many commitments are coming in? Gibson
and Booker.
Okay, two are coming in. But there's guys like Max Sutter that we need to talk about more. Kind of a guy that we felt strongly was going to commit, or we thought he could commit in February. There's a lot of Alabama vibes. I think it was Alabama and Ole Miss at the time. And he didn't. So we're getting here to his official visit. I like where Alabama stands. And like y'all, we want to be clear. Things change on these visits, good and bad. We've seen good and we've seen bad. Discussions are being had. But going into this visit, I like where Alabama sits with Sutter.
Yeah, and I sometimes hate a lot of this stuff that kind of comes out, from different places. It's like, oh, this is the weekend. Alabama's going to get this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy.
Yeah, that's true.
Let it play out. Like, just let the weekend play out, because they will miss on somebody that you don't want them to miss on. But Max Sutter, I feel like going into the weekend, Alabama is in a good spot. He has taken all of his official visits. Hadn't really come out and said that another school has taken the lead in his recruitment, anything like that. They were the leader heading into the summer. And that's what we were kind of waiting to see. Was an official visit to Ohio State going to change things? Was a visit to in-state Illinois or over to Penn State? Was that going to turn the tide in his recruitment? And it seems like everything's still in a pretty good position for Alabama. So he's going to come in this weekend, sit down with the coaching staff. This is going to be his second trip to Alabama this year. Was also on campus back in March. And I think around then we thought, maybe he might go ahead and do something. But he wanted to take the official visits, just like Xavier Croll. He's got a commitment set for next Thursday. So it could be a really big Thursday for Alabama next week with Croll and Sutter announcing decisions. But this has been the guy that they have heavily recruited for a long time at the tight end position. He's a guy that was offered last spring and has visited for multiple games during the fall, and now gets back to Tuscaloosa for the final trip before a decision.
Yeah, the thing with Sutton, we knew going in, Bama wanted to find an impact tight end. That was their goal. They found guys they liked last year. They want to flip that room around a little bit. Mark Boban briefly flirted with Alabama. That NIL is insane. USC is making it rain, literally, throwing crazy money around front end in that class. But Sutter certainly would fall in the parameters of that. Another guy that doesn't probably get enough love is Zay Hall. I mean, this is a guy that's not ranked that high, and fans are I think there's a tendency for some people to get upset like you're missing on targets because you go after others. But Bama was just waiting to get him on campus. I mean, he fit the physical bill. They liked his tape, wanted to see him live and running around at a camp setting. And once they did that, they offered him. And I'm not sure if you don't trust this staff's evaluations by now, I don't think you're ever going to trust them.
No, I mean, I think, and it kind of goes back to the last step too. I mean, Alabama, they would miss on somebody, and then they'd end up with an Eddie Jackson or a Josh Jacobs or somebody like that, and people were upset about it. I can remember a summer camp when Amari Cooper was offered in late July, and people were like, well, it must be because we're missing out on X wide receiver or this wide receiver, but they like to see guys in person. Zay Hall's a guy that they had on campus 3 or 4 times during the spring. Obviously, he's in Tuscaloosa, but every kid in Tuscaloosa doesn't get invited to come on campus for an unofficial visit and to spend time with the coaching staff and sit in, Coach Womack or Chuck Morrell's office and learn about the playbook and stuff like that. They wanted to see him in person in summer camp, and I think they felt like because he didn't have the extensive 30 offer list that they could wait to see him a little bit more during the summer. And that's what they did. They brought him into camp. He came with his high school camp for a 7-on-7 camp last Wednesday, but he also worked out, and they were able to see him move around. He ran a 40, I think it was 4.54 that he tested in. I know there's some different height and weights out there, but he measured in about 6'1", 230 pounds.
230 is that's a big backer running 4.54 out of high school.
So if you want to make some comparisons, I mean, you look at Justin Jefferson when he came in. I mean, he was 6 foot, about 205 pounds when he first arrived. And, Duke Johnson last year, about 6'1", 205 pounds. So it's not like they're looking at at these small guys. They're trying to get, or these short guys. They're looking at good football players, and they see Zay Hall as a guy that they liked, they offered, and they want to be a part of their football team.
Yeah, that's true. So the running back position, no running backs committed. We've seen a few fall off the board. Estrada committed to who did he commit? Minnesota. He committed to Minnesota. That's hard. Yeah, people are saying, this is a different world. You're seeing Minnesota get kids that SEC guys wanted. You're seeing Alabama flip Iowa State and
USF.
Yes, USF beat Tennessee for a guy yesterday. So you're seeing a different kind of world when it comes to all that. But they got Croll, who we mentioned. They've also got Javari Barnett, who came in. There hadn't been a lot of fanfare. Again, this is a guy committed to Illinois. And I know SEC fans, we're stuck up. You know what I mean? We're like, Illinois, SMU, Iowa State. I get it. But that's how teams felt about our basketball program for years. So you see Oates flipped it. I think everybody's flipped it to some degree. But bringing in Barnett's a little bit interesting. A guy the staff definitely liked from Florida and committed to Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, this guy that had had a banged up junior season, missed all but 3 games. But fortunately for him, the games were earlier in the season and not late in the season. So it's not like he's recovering from an injury right now. He's healthy, and played the final 3 games of the season. Rushed for close to 250 yards. So Alabama likes him. I mean, they offered him back in February, have recruited him heavily, committed to Illinois, but then I think it was exactly a week after committing to Illinois, he was in Tuscaloosa for A-Day. And I think it was more so, hey, come to campus, meet with the coaching staff. He had already met with Robert Gillespie. So meet the rest of the staff and kind of see how you fit in up here. And they've recruited him ever since. They set up the official visit, and now he's comes in. And I think with Alabama, if you can get a Xavier Croll, this would be a great second back. And I don't think I don't think Alabama looks at him as a number two. I think even if they didn't get a Xavier Croll, they would be happy with getting
Sure.
Javari Barnett on its commitment list. So we'll see how the weekend goes. But as you mentioned, USF beating Tennessee for a recruit, and it's not one of those recruits who's saying, "Oh, I picked USF over Tennessee." It's Tennessee saying, this kid just picked USF over us. So, a lot of these schools, smaller schools that are recruiting players that don't get the 5 stars, that don't get the
They've
top
got
100,
money. They've got
they
money
can
too
spend
now.
more money on the
They got
lower
money.
ranked guys that don't have the big offers. And so when we see a guy like that commit to a school that you wouldn't think an Alabama or a Georgia would miss out on, a lot of that has to do more with with the investment that those schools are making in him, just like the NFL.
Let's touch on two more, and that's not the whole visitors list. There's guys like Josiah Jackson, Anthony Davis expected in, Mitchell Smith, both of the last two from Georgia, Mitchell Smith from Mississippi, and Owen Cabell from Tennessee. But let's talk before we get out of here. Well, we're going to go to the other prospects in a minute, but Bama has two commitments coming in: Chris Booker and Zion Gibson. And these are interesting because they've taken a lot of visits since committing. I mean, we've seen schools pushing for them. Booker's particularly interesting. I know Ole Miss, Georgia, Florida, and Georgia are filling up their O-line class quickly. Gibson's taken a lot of visits, including Tennessee, Ole Miss. We've seen him in a lot of other uniforms on social media. It's going to be interesting to see how these talks go this week to me, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. Zion has been committed to Alabama since Christmas Eve, has visited several times, but he's also gone back up to Knoxville 3 or 4 times since that decision. Ole Miss got a visit from him earlier this month as well. He considered taking a visit to Auburn, decided not to take that visit. So, Ole Miss, Tennessee really fighting there. I think Tennessee probably a bigger threat than Ole Miss, just because he is considered, to Tennessee, their number one defensive back target in this recruiting class. So, he's had that conversation, that sit down chat with the Balls, and he's going to sit down with Alabama this weekend and have the same conversation. His family will be down there. This is a guy that grew up an Alabama fan as well. So, how big of an impact is that going to make on him as far as sticking with that decision? And then with Chris Booker, received his first really major offer from Alabama back, I think it was February the 1st at their junior day. And of course, there were questions like, oh, this is a kid from Georgia that Georgia didn't offer, right off the bat. He didn't have all these other offers. And then, what happens within the month? He has an offer from Florida. He has an offer from Georgia, Ole Miss. A lot of schools started really pursuing him, especially Georgia and Florida. They really kicked it up a notch, trying to flip him away. He's taken official visits to all of those schools. Was in Gainesville this past weekend, and they've certainly treated him as one of their top priority linemen in this class. They do have 4 offensive line commitments, so does that play a little bit of a factor in that decision? Georgia kind of the same way. They have 4 offensive line commitments, and as of right now, Alabama has 2 offensive line commitments and 2 interior guys. So I think they would still like to get one more as far as an outside tackle, but they would like to keep Booker on board. So they're going to have a serious conversation with him this weekend about these other visits that he's taken throughout the month. What are these other schools promising you, offering you, and what is it that we can do? So a lot of eyes will be on those 2 guys this weekend.
Before we wrap things up, do us a favor if you get a chance, try us out at BamaOnLine.com. It's $1 for the first week. You can talk to us, chit chat with us nonstop, a lot of discussions. Pretty versatile crowd. The very for the emotionals. If you're calm, if you're a little bit anxious this time of year, it's $1 for the first week. You can try us out there. If you do, let us know. Sign up, hit the message board, holler, let us know you're here, and we'll walk you through the process of BamaOnline.com so you get the most for your dollar. Andrew, got a few commitments briefly. Few commitments or targets visiting elsewhere.
Yeah, I think one area, one school we're really paying very close attention to this weekend is Michigan. And you have two Alabama targets that are going to be up there for officials. Malachi Lee, top 100 lineman out of Hawaii, who, when this process started, Michigan's been the favorite, but he's taking visits to Georgia, Alabama, and Texas this month. Can they, can Michigan close the deal, or will he be, still pretty open once he gets back? He's going to make a decision next Friday. And then Titan Davis, a guy that we've talked about for a while, one of Alabama's, premier defensive line targets in this class. He's going to be at Michigan as well. He narrowed it down to Alabama and Michigan a couple weeks ago. Hasn't taken a visit since his Alabama official visit on May the 30th. I've been waiting on this Michigan trip. Then we should see a commitment, probably within a week or two. Alabama, I think, in both of our opinions, is in the driver's seat heading into the weekend. Michigan's obviously going to try to sway them, but I think going in, we like where things stand with Titan.
Yeah. And again, we appreciate y'all, value your time, and I hope you value ours. Hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to bring it. Hey, and we're doing this show on Thursday. Will you do it on Friday? So we're going to see if this list changed. This is not there's a lot of jockeying going on before this dead period. There's a lot of people pulling out. I think we saw Bama target KJ Ford, who's very unlikely at this point, I believe, is now going to Ohio State out of the blue. Saw that announcement.
They missed it. They were projected to get an edge player.
Luke Waffles, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I love the
yesterday,
name.
And then it went back and forth. And somebody, how accurate is it? Probably accurate, but we don't know the whole truth. But there was a story that came out that there was a bidding war between Ohio State and Ohio State and USC at the last minute. USC ends up, winning that war, which is wild. That all these
he committed while we were on the show, because Steve Wilfong, who's great, he had USC, Ohio State, and then USC at the end. I believe it was going back and forth, and I think On3 reported $2.5 million for 2 years, which is that's banana money. I think a lot of people are just getting this in while they can, in case the rules do change. But y'all check us out. We'd appreciate it. Andrew Bone, get us out of here.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun on BOL this weekend. So come check us out. We'll have a live thread discussing the weekend visitors. What's happening on campus. All of these guys are arriving in Tuscaloosa later this evening. Now the official visit part of it won't actually start until Friday, but it's gonna be a big weekend. We'll be keeping track of everything happening here and other schools as well. So come over to BOL. Check out all of our content that we've got, and be sure to live on the BOL message board, the BOL Roundtable.
Everyone have a safe weekend, and we'll see you Monday or Tuesday. Roll Tide.